Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode. My name is Steve White, and I created and designed the Steve White podcast just to give you a place of empowerment, inspiration, wellness, and positivity. I hope that you find some healing and strength while I help you to see the beauty in the grey area. In my earlier years, I was the kind of person who would be best described as determined. However, as I look back from a more informed perspective, I'd better describe it as stubborn. I was stubborn in my vision, stubborn in my planning, and stubborn in my pursuit to anything that I set my mind on. The second layer to this stubbornness was a tendency to become attached to things, ideas, outcomes, and imaginary ideals. Another layer down was fear. Fear of failure, fear of not being perceived as good enough, successful enough, or smart enough. I had this real underlying fear of a wasted and underachieved life. And the manifestation of this was displayed through attachment. I held on to moments way beyond their time and gradually started to become motivated by the opinions and gratification of others. My goals were attached to wanting to make people proud, to acceptance and adoration from external people, and on a deeper level, an egotistical perspective of what I believed success and a life well lived was. This way of living had me in a place where nothing I achieved or accomplished was enough for me, as it was bound to an invisible image that I created in my mind and then projected and expected back from other people and the world. I was receiving a lot of compliments for my works, and the ways that people described me wasn't how I saw myself. It was at this point that I had to learn to let go of the desired outcomes and the things that I pinned all of my hopes, mental well-being and happiness on. I learned very soon into my process that when we have an internal void, fear can have us believe that it can be filled by acquisition, accumulation, consumerism, and a numerical value to the power of 10. But the great paradox of filling a void is letting go and detaching from the external things and the internal perception of external things. The more you let go, the more you gain. I made a decision that I wanted to reset my mind to factory settings and build from a place of nothing. In order to do this, I had to detach from the things that were perpetuating the false beliefs that I was embodying. For me, this was influence, fame, power, popularity, and being the best. These were pillars in my life that grew taller and taller the more that I placed myself in situations where I had to live up to them. I had to unlearn these behaviors and learn the practice of not minding what happens, not being so attached to any particular outcome where it could be then deemed a success or failure. It just is what it is, and that is okay. I no longer wanted to be the reactor to my circumstances, rather the one who experiences them without judgment. This is a daily walk for me, and it takes commitment and living from a state of gratitude and selflessness to life, and what many people would really define as carefree. This practice involves removing any resistance to a potential negative outcome, and on the contrary, the meaning of a successful one. Neither outcome defines me, but instead is a moment experienced. By releasing the attachment to the outcome, we are releasing the energy of fear, worry, panic, and self-judgment, all things that we may be holding on to until our fears prove us right. Instead, by releasing these fears and external expectations, should failure occur, we can experience equanimity, which is a calm mental state after a shock, a disappointment, or in a difficult situation. I like to define equanimity as a tree that is deeply rooted. The storm may come, the winds may be rough, and your branches may bend and in some cases break, but your rooting system is fixed and not bound by the external forces which surround you. Instead, your internal is accepting of the storm without judgment, as you know you're deeply rooted beyond the storm. Detachment is not that you shouldn't own anything, but that nothing should own you. Very few of us are able to take a step back to exercise a certain amount of control over our thoughts. It turns into a problem when we confuse our thoughts with feelings and end up taking actions on impulse. Somehow, we conclude that every thought needs to be acted upon, and it doesn't turn out very well. Detachment from thoughts, often practiced through meditation, allows you to look at your thoughts as an outsider, letting them come and go without allowing yourself to feel too much about them. This allows you to practice a certain amount of detachment, and you begin to see that not all thoughts are important. You realize that most of them are just clouding your head, and it will be best to free yourself from them. Detachment means accepting things as they are, knowing that everything is evolving and changing, nothing is permanent, and everything is temporary in life. There is also something to be said about focusing on things that we do not want to happen, as I believe that what you focus on expands, and thus it becomes more of a reality to you and more likely that it will happen. It is almost like you've been preparing for it, making space for it, sent it an invite and welcomed it into your life. We all have different attachments, but they are all founded by our perspective and perception of what we think is important to us or what we think we need. I challenge you today to look into the fabrics of your life and check to see what you're attached to. Is it self-gratification? Is it an ego-driven desire to make you not feel inadequate for a moment? Is it a habitual tendency to act outside of your character because you think that the character will get you what you want? If you answered yes to any of these, it's okay. It is quite common for all of us to be attached to some vision of ourselves or something in this world. There is nothing wrong with having a vision, but when the vision is self-centered and is placed above who you are right now, that is where the attachment can become a conflict to everything who you are, and it can make your living experience a miserable and unfulfilling one, as nothing satisfies enough, reaches you for long enough, or gives you the gratification that your heart is set on. We only ever notice attachment when the consequences become difficult to withstand. The steps to detachment are identifying the problem or thing that you are attached to. Then we believe that it is possible for the problem to change. Then we acknowledge that our change is unlikely to occur by the reiteration and repetition of the methods that we have already deployed. Then we identify patterns of behavior that reinforce these beliefs. It is at this point where we can get even a small sense that we have the resources within us to overcome it. And one by one we begin to disprove these beliefs that we have allowed to become habitual behaviors and self-fulfilling prophecies. I'm further on in my journey now, and it is still a challenge for me, but I have to consciously take these steps to tell myself that I'm not going to allow myself to repackage egoic adulation in some other form to fill a void of a previously lived self-imposed inadequacy. Learning to live intentionally with non-attachment supports you in maintaining your power over your own happiness. Be kind to yourself and cut yourself some slack. The pain of detachment is temporary. It will pass and you will be stronger and able to love more deeply from your state of non-attachment. Stay vigilant. Be consciously aware of your attachments as they develop and flow through your life. Life is a series of attaching and releasing. You will avoid much suffering and be clearer, happier, and more productive by simply letting go and learning healthy detachment. I will be honest with you. The road gets narrower the more self-aware you become. As the more you detach from the things that you once thought and believed were important, the more you realize that expansion comes from letting go. From a rational viewpoint, it can appear that your life is becoming more restrictive and constrained, but the emotional, mental, and spiritual experience of that is quite the opposite. We've been taught that freedom is pushing for our desires, but true freedom is detachment from our desires and contentment within that space, and it is only in this place where the void can be filled with something more meaningful, and we can experience equanimity as a baseline state. This is the safe space where we surrender our desires and free ourselves from the pressures of trying to become something or someone, and instead, just be everything that we already are now. I do hope that you enjoyed this episode and take something away from it that can impact your life in a positive way. Please read the show description for more information on my guest and links to where you can see more of my works, and subscribe if you want to hear more. No matter where you are in the world right now, or what you have been through, or what you are currently going through, I want you to know that this is not how your story ends. Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay blessed, and I wish you better days.